So my name is Alex, and I'm really honored to be here in front of you, sharing an experience about the industry I really like dearly. I've been a programmer for 4 years, aside from a few side hustles. And today I packed in the presentation 3 things I'd like to share with you: how to simply and easily make a quick edits to your code to make it faster, how to choose between big O of performance and memory management, how to avoid accidentally doing more harm than good when you're working with the code. So first of all, faster code. I have snippets of the code, and they are a little bit exaggerated. They're not real life examples, but I compensate, for example, for the lack of complexity with a bigger amount of loops. You will see the examples. Some of them may seem very obvious. These tips are applicable for front-end, but they also applicable for Node environments, Python if you like, C++, C, or I don't know, real life maybe. They're language agnostic. So the first thing is, most of you probably know about, but it's a real underdog of the performance improvement. It's a short circuit evaluation. And here we have the example of the AND operator. But it's very easy to do, is just stop the evaluation as soon as you know the condition is met or not. The bad example with the big X is the conveniently named slow function is running first. And if it's false, it will stop running and the result equals 0 will not be evaluated. Now, to make it just a little bit faster, we could switch those and make the very simple evaluation of result equals 1, which is basically a comparison for every processor. It's super simple to do the comparison of numbers. And if it's false, then the conveniently named slow function will not run. So I saw an example of regex of the whole HTML page being done first, and then saw a Boolean being checked. So of course, if you just switch it, we'll just make it faster if the Boolean is false, right? So the benefits of it's just faster. You have a better control of the flow. It's super simple to implement, and it's rather safe. Your function will do the same, just quicker, and it's free, meaning no trade-offs, no sacrifices, and your most likely test won't fail. Won't even be needed to be rewritten. This is another example of how you could stack the fastest to slowest. Another example is the logical OR. Same thing, just if the condition on the left is true, then any engine will understand that anything else no longer needed to be evaluated. So slow function will not run if first example is true. Another technique I implemented just quite recently, and I assume it saved quite a time for me, was the early breakout technique. Now, I know that you use arrays to usually go through all the items and do stuff with it, or find one single item from the array. Now, if you need to do things in the array until some condition is met, like in this example, then it's very beneficial to try to break out of the loop as soon as you know the condition is met. So in this example, we're creating an array of 1 million items, but like I said, it compensates with amount of loop for the complexity of the code. We need to add numbers until we reach 250,000. All right, so we just have a huge array of 0.1, 0.9 random numbers, and in about halfway through the array, we get the result. Easiest thing to do is just to use the reduce, and it's a one-liner, so it's super easy. Just to add all numbers and compare if we have this amount of not. But better result to use something like for loop and check every time, because again, number comparison for the processor is super trivial. So you can check every time if the number is already met the condition. So since we will meet the condition about halfway through the array, this was, in my testing, 50% faster. Another thing, and this is a bit more rare thing to know about, is the mixed types in the array. So having mixed types of values in the array may cause you to lose your performance a little bit, because, at least the way the V8 engine works, it will have the different memory allocations for strings and numbers. And the lookups will be more expensive for the V8. So in this example, we have, another rather exaggerated example of 10 million items. And two arrays. One is just number array. We have 0, and which is a number, and they have mixed array. So it's a string, it's a boolean, and a null. And we're just pushing those 10 million items into the array. And this simple function with pure array takes 0.3 seconds, and the other one that has one string, one boolean, and one null, and 10 million numbers. So basically, it's obvious that we have much more numbers than other types. Still, it takes 75% slower than just pure numbers in the array. Or same thing with the strings. Now, this example, of course, is only for huge arrays. You don't need to care about if you have like 10 items in the array, it's fine. But if you're going through a known number of data, make sure you have no alien values. Most of the languages will only allow you to have different types in the arrays or lists, whatever it's called. Again, probably known technique, but this one is a bit exceptional for not like the rest of those, because memorization has a bit of a trap in it. But let's get to it. So in this example, we have in the middle, again, sorry, I cannot use the cursor, but in the middle, we have the inline SVG function that takes an argument of, let's say, a file name, and caches the result every time it's run. So we have repeating values as an argument, and we will cache the file.svg and the check.svg. And every time we encounter those, we will get the information from the cache. And it's super fast. If you have repeating values, and actually this example is from years ago, I had an example of had a task of inlining a bunch of SVGs, now the pricing pages have, or the comparison pages with a bunch of checks, access. So you have to inline every item regardless of if it's already been done. It's very fast. It's rather easy to implement. You just create a higher order function, and it reduces time complexity, but does anyone know the catch I talked about in the beginning of this one? Does anyone know what's the problem with memorization? What's the trap in it? This actually brings me to the next topic, is balancing the big O of performance and memory. Really quickly, let's recap what the big O does, and it's a concept used to describe the time complexity of the algorithms, aka time taken to run an algorithm as the input grows. And so the first one is the constant time. It's just basically time will not change with the size of the array. Right, so if I can again put my 10 million array here, and it will be same time as array of 2 items. The second one is the linear time. It will grow equally with the size of the array. The third one is the exponential. It's a exponential growth. So it's a bit of a rabbit hole there. So the more nested loops you have, the longer it will take if the input grows. And the last but not best is the factorial time, which is probably the worst function you can have, time processing wise. So big O just helps us to visualize how much our function will cost. When we deal with arrays of data of unknown size, and we do that a lot, I bet, it's good to understand what our complexity of the function will be. Let's talk about possible scenarios. One scenario I can come up with and actually encountered is just, let's say we have the function that we need to find repeating numbers. And it's number 3, right? It's the second and fourth in the array. And we just need to find that number 3 because it's the first repeating one. On the left side, we have the exponential time complexity function. You see it has one nested loop in it, or 2 nested loops. I don't know. On the right side, we have the memory complex one, because basically it duplicates the array in the accumulator until it finds the value. So again, accumulator can grow ultimately, unlimitedly. One is the time complex, and another one is the memory complex one. Another example, let's say we have the usernames, and of course list is of unknown size. The task is to store users somewhere and check if the user exists. So on the left side, again, we have the array, which is very efficient in memory, but slow to look up. So if I'm looking for a username, it will be O of n, of n complexity to look up through the array. Whilst on the right side, we have the object, which is not so memory efficient, but has the of one lookup time. And you can use the examples from previous slides to just align them. So again, I'll use the arrays, as here would represent the nested loops, and the objects would represent the growing accumulator. How to decide where to pick? I asked the Midjourney to create a time and space image for me. Deciding what to pick. Well, first of all, just I would create a simple code snippet just to check around the things whenever I have a task, and then I may consider the factors. So first of all, the user device type. You could think about that. If it's a high end or low end. So for example, low end, you would have to sacrifice the performance a little bit just to make sure that the memory is always kept safe. If it's size of the audience, again, you have a lot of users. You probably care more about performance because Google, Bing, and search engines loves performance. Data input size. If the input is too big, go with the space efficiency. But I guess most important one factor to consider is, do I need to care about that? I mean, these things it all may sound a bit complex, so do you really need to do that? So we have a third topic to try to realize that. So third topic, keep it simple to avoid accidentally doing more harm than good. And I have a small confession to make. When I became a programmer in Nord security, I was very interested in I still am interested in all the V8 stuff, its hiding classes, optimization, de-optimizations, array buffers, web workers, all the buzzwords they drive me nuts. I'm nerd for that. But I don't think my colleagues should suffer because of my nerdiness. And I tried to, as soon as I learned something, I tried to put it in my code. I mean, weak maps, sure, why not? Here, have those. Look at documentation, and that's not really a nice way to do that. I realized that, and actually, I have a photo of me a few years ago. This is me with all the overwhelming things I found on the internet. The state of JavaScript tells you about, hey, here's some unknown things you might find interesting, or I just learned from some Udemy tutorial. If this unusual syntax, yes, oh my god, the decorators, and bunch of stuff. Bunch of unnecessary showing off just harms the code. My tips would be, cool that you can do it, but should you? I mean, I like this phrase. So first of all, don't over-engineer, right? If you're dealing with if you sense that you will be dealing with the time complexity, think about first your time complexity. Is it worth your time? Is this task really worth this time you will put in optimizing it? Don't predict the future. If you have, from the previous example of the users array, if you have 10 users, again, no need to do the over-engineering here. Maybe you will get those 10 million users from the, again, previous slides, but let's worry about that when we reach the number. So let's not predict the future. Let's do the code for what we have now. And the last but not least is the showing off is just a favorite programming phrase, bad practice. If you know what JavaScript generators are and how to use them, great. But are you sure you need to do that? Your team will be happy you added this to the code base when you could have on arrays? So yeah, there's a bunch of nice things I'm interested in, and you can learn about JavaScript. You can do the low-level development with it if you want. But you're working in a company, or at least with a team of people, I would consider it rather not professional, just by throwing in buzzwords in a code base. So let's just quickly recap what it's all right? If you can make it faster for free, make it faster for free. When choosing between performance and memory, remember, memory cannot wait. If it's full, your program is dead. And last but not least, cool code doesn't equal good code, okay? Thank you very much for your time. And Now my great colleague, Edgar.
So my name is Edgar López Aguilar. I originally from Mexico. I've been living in Germany for 4 years now, and I don't speak German. So I really wanted to talk about the importance of localization in your product and your projects, and why it's important for us as front-end developers to care about this sort of stuff. Okay, so I'm a front-end developer at NordTech, other product in the Nord security umbrella. Quick agenda. First, we're going to talk about why localization, internationalization is important, some metrics and reasons for that. Then we are going to go to the difference between localization, internationalization, and other buzzwords that we have like around in that area. Then the reasons for implementing the internationalization, but early in the development process, and then some conclusions and Q&A. So which language should I use for my website product? Normally, it's a question that some people ask themselves, normally management or people that are actually paying. But if you are just developing your own product, you normally would say the language that I speak or the language that I normally use. Or you know what, why not English? So let's get some metrics. We all heard this English is a universal language. And let's look at some numbers. According to some statistics and studies, there's approximately 1.5 billion people that speak English in the world as of 2023, and that's roughly 19% of the population. So not everyone speaks English. Do any of you know which is the most spoken language in the world? No, as of 2023. In Spanish? No, also no. Anyone? No. No, English. It's English. It's English. 2023, English is the number one language, but that leaves roughly 6.5 billion people that actually don't understand English. So I know what you're thinking. Hey, Edgar, it's a lot of people that speak English. I mean, we are speaking in English right now, so I don't know. Let's use that. So we think, okay, so maybe every page should be at least in English, right? English and maybe some other language, whatever, but it's not. So according to some statistics, 56% of all websites, I put all in quotes because you cannot really measure everything that it's on in the internet. But roughly for like some million websites, 56% of the websites are in English, but that only reaches 25% of the users online. 25% of the users online use English, then Chinese Mandarin 90%, Spanish 8%, and Arabic 5%. Of all the users online, which are roughly 4.9 billion, the top 10 languages only account for 77%. So the rest, 23%, it's from all the other languages in the world. Does anyone know which is like English first, Chinese, Spanish, and Arabic? Does anyone know the fifth language? Take a guess. French, no. Portuguese, close, no. German, that's cool, no. It's actually Indonesian or Malaysian. It's quite interesting metric. And then next one, it's who said Portuguese? Okay, you get the prize. But let's go right on. Okay, perfect. So then we have some other languages. So let's say, okay, 56% of all websites are in English and 25% of the users are rich. And then we have other metrics. 60.6% of users, even if they speak English, they prefer to use their own native language. Like, for example, I normally Google things or use Spanish. Even if I work in English and I use English, for programming stuff, no, but that's other thing. Other statistics, surveys say that 78% of online shoppers are more likely to make a purchase if the online store is localized, because, probably it means that it's local and that shipping it will cost less, but we don't know. More than 50% of the queries in Google are in other language, that it's not English. So, that's quite intensive. Metrics for the European Union, the most widely spoken language in the European Union it's not English, it's actually German, because it has the most native speakers in the European Union, with 100 million, then plus 30 million that speak it as second language. The most understood, however, is English, because the business and stuff, they use English. 44% of adults actually understand English. The most spoken foreign language, of course, is English, because it's the language of business in the European Union, followed by French and German, because French everywhere, like all the things of the European Union and the headquarters and stuff, it's in French-speaking countries, and German because, we are all here in Germany because here it's where business happens. And then they asked some people in the European Union what's the most useful language that they want to learn after English, and most people say Russian. So that's good. Then German, then French. I know what you're thinking now. Hey, Edgar, those are a lot of languages you just said. Why should I even bother to localize, right, my application? So some reasons to having localization in your product. I will give it to you. But first, let's see what is actually localization, okay? So in localization, we have this thing that is called GILT. GILT stands for Globalization, Internationalization, Localization, and Translation, okay? So let's see each one of them. The globalization one, it's actually all the practices of making, it's this buzzword of globalization. It's what allows, someone in the United States to buy a German car, or a Lithuanian company like Nord Security to hire a Mexican in Germany. So that's globalization. Then next we have internationalization, also known as I-18N. Does anyone know why it's called I-18N?
Stands ends with N and then
Perfect. You also get a prize. Awesome. So that's a strategy to actually adapt a product or to handle all these different national markets. In software, it's everything regarding, making the infrastructure, the libraries, the stuff to actually handle the localization. Designing and developing an application to support localization. So each locale for a different market, that's actually internationalization. So that's why that's the thing that we frontends should care about, right, as software developers. Then we have localization, that it's actually making the product change according to the locale that you have. So that includes interface translation, the date format, American format that uses the month first, because yes, some languages are actually right from left to right and right to left. So some of that and some etc. Some more stuff. And translation is just to take one written form of communication and put it in another language. Okay? So right now, as I said, we want to talk about internationalization because it's what we care as software developers. So now we are the title of the talk is wrong, so we should talk about actually internationalization. So let's speak about that. So okay, Edgar, so what are some reasons of having internationalization in our projects? So here are some quick ones. You increase the user base because you can reach more people with the language. That means it's increased sales. People are more likely to spend their money in your product. Improve brand reputation, because if you cater for many language, then you can actually have more brand reputation, competitive advantage, and what we should care about is improved UX and actually better SEO. So depending on the region that query of the search is, actually if you are in that language, you will get better hits for that. So that's a good tip. So okay, I know what you're thinking. Thanks, Edgar, you have convinced me. Let's implement this. So let me create a tech ticket to implement the internationalization next year, right? Next Q and whatever. So you try to put it in your man, and this is your I-18 localization library in your backend, and you will never reach that. So let's see some reasons to actually implement it early in our code, some reasons and some things that we can get of that. So as I said, it's better for business. It improves project planning because then you already thinking or planning ahead that you want to implement that, and you don't have to take into consideration, refactoring and stuff. So it's less tech debt that you leave. You get this accessibility. You can reach more people early in your product, which make it more visible, which is nice, and improves UX and improves design. So regarding improved design, let's see, it's not the same if you leave like a space for a text in English that if you change, the language. So design people should be aware of that, and that will ultimately affect us as front-end developers in what can I do, like where should I don't know, crop my stuff with what, CSS class or property I should use to handle if this string grows. Even if the string right now is just a label, maybe in another language it will be in another different position and it will be too large. So actually another tip, Spotify has a design documentation. Like it's catered for designer, but it's a good read. I would recommend you to search for it. It's called Designing with Localization in Mind, and it's a Spotify guide, and it uses some like metrics and some buzzwords and stuff. And some examples. So for example, these shares in other languages, I think it's Portuguese, it's compartimentos or something, I don't know, I don't speak Portuguese. And it overflows the UI. So next, you have also some people that have their name changed or that they have more than one last name. I have a lot of issues here in Germany because in Latin American countries you get two last names and they say, hey, that's too much. So if you change it, you can actually overflow and move it however you want. You can see where you are going to implement truncation, because maybe for other languages your truncation will stop making sense. So you have the Jahresrückblick. I am studying German. You have the truncation, and then the word it doesn't make any more sense. So you can also keep that in mind. And I think the most important one is that if you're catered for a different country or a different, part of the world, you will get cultural difference. And cultural differences ultimately affect what you do and how you cater for that. So for example, this example of Spotify, they did this to promote these Diwali festivities, I think, light festivities in India. And after doing some research and getting like no hits for this or not good feedback, they discovered that it's the Festival of Lights. So people like a lighter theme, so they have to change it. And you said, hey, why should I care? That's designer problems. But you have to code all of these changes in design. So why is this important in design? Design helps you structuring the code. Like if you know where the design is going to be, then you can think how you're going to structure the code. You can future-proof the application. You can create or code a design system to help you optimize and make it faster. And you can improve collaboration because now you can speak with, your designer. You can speak with whoever is translating the stuff. You can speak with that. And another important reason to implement it early is that it's super easy. It's super easy to implement it early. You don't have to refactor your whole code base and your whole strings when you want to implement a new language. It's so easy that even ChatGPT can help us with it. This example is for JavaScript because that's what I use, but I know maybe frontends use some other stuff. So I asked him the quickest, simplest way to implement internationalization. It says that with library, it says import the library, put it here. Next, it's just put it as a provider, surround your app. This is in React. And then just next, you can use the translation, and then you can get like your translation file, so you can actually cater for different languages. You can put it, that's it, you can just change it, and after that, one more. After that, you can just use a code from like a method from the library to actually change language. You just put it in a select and stuff. I test that code. It's missing one or two import and some things that are no longer relevant, but it runs. And it's really easy. It's like just these 5 simple steps, and then you have internationalization, and you can forget about it. Even if you're not going to use it, you already have it. And then all your strings can be in English or German or whatever language you speak. And when you have to use it or to change it, then it will be super easy. So some libraries for internationalization that are really popular: I18X, React International Format Message. That's for ISU message string. That's really nice because it's just like Google Translate your stuff. Polyglot.js and Lingui.js. I don't have examples for other languages, programming languages, but I will find it. Then you have some popular translation management system. I use one that is not here, that is called Weblate. That's open source. It's not nice. I mean, it's not easy to use, and then developers end up handling all the translations instead of translators because they cannot actually work with that. So there's some here. Localize. I know that in some products in Nord Security we use Localize to manage. So because that's the other thing, where are we going to put the translation? Is it in the front end? Is it in the back end? Are we going to have a management service on the cloud? Where should we get the translation? What happens if we don't have internet? That sort of stuff. So that gives us the question is bad translation better than no translation at all? Sometimes you get funny little Easter eggs in your code or in real life where you just translate things and you say, hey, doesn't matter, just put it in Google Translate, change it, put it, doesn't matter. And now we cater for different countries, different locales. It's easy money. But sometimes you are handling important information. So vaccine information, where you're telling people that doesn't matter, it's optional, you can, it's okay, because you just put it through Google Translation. Or there's some stuff for this, actually it's from a free trade accord between Korea and United States, and they just put it through Google Translate, and they found 200, 300 translation errors, and it delayed the whole accord. Two countries that cannot trade openly because some translation issues. So in software, you can also get some other stuff, for example, in NordLocker, we only have English support, but we have internationalization. We use the T function to handle all our internationalization. We only support English because what it's stopping us, it's some legal nuances, some legal stuff. Because if you are, making a website for the government or making a legal website, then a mistranslation could actually affect a lot of people. That should not stop us to actually implement internationalization as a developer. That should stop management, that should stop business, all the people that are paid to actually think and worry about that, when to think it. But when they want to think it, then it's our job to do it as easy and as, wholesome as possible for us to implement. So internationalization is everyone's concern. Developers handle internationalization. Then localization gets handled, where translators, reviewers, designers have to take into consideration different things. You, as a developer, should talk with all these people to see, hey, maybe you are not thinking about other language, which will be longer, right? So you can get this back and forth, you can collaborate. Of course, managers should take into consideration that you have to design for different structures, and it should be a thought process that they should have, and that can lead you to internationalization. And that's pretty much it, what I have right now. So the end, or if you speak Swedish, and that's it. You can follow me on LinkedIn. The Twitter is actually quite new, so I promise I use it more. So if you want to reach me from there, then that's it. I will leave you with my good friend, Varghese, with he will discuss some other stuff. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Guten Abend, right? Yeah. Well, I'm drawing German now. I have an interesting topic today. I would like to talk about fortifying React app from XSS attack. So it would be interesting, I guess. I'll try to make it interesting. Okay. Let me introduce myself. I'm Varghese. I'm a senior front-end engineer working with Nord Security. Before I start, I would like to know how many of you use React in a daily life? I mean, Nord 480. Almost everyone. Oh man, I'm a bit nervous now. I thought nobody, then I can just simply say and go away. Okay, so do you guys think React is safe? How many of you think React is safe? Nobody. Okay. I would say it's React is safe mostly by default because it's been a mostly used framework around the world, and so many great minds working behind the framework. So they would probably think of it to make it secure by default, right? So it's mostly secure, but we can see how secure it is. Let's discuss an example of like data binding, and let's see how secure React is. So you guys probably know what it is. Like I'm trying to print a username, a variable I have. So imagine like what kind of values I can have for this username. I can have a string, I can have a number, I can have whatever. So React would probably do the data binding for me. But if I have something like this for username, what do you guys think? If you guys think this would bring excesses or any issues to the React, then probably you might be wrong, because it will convert the HTML entities like the tag or the script thing by default. So that's what I said, like React is secure. And do you know what it is called? So this in the secure world, we call it like output encoding. So React will encode the HTML entities and it will print like this. So it will convert the HTML entities to like a representative like LT for the less than, GT for the greater than, likewise. Yeah, React is safe by default. I don't have to take the topic anymore. I'm done with it. So you can enjoy doing React. As I said, like React is secure, but who can make it vulnerable? It's us. I won't even say us, it's me, like lazy developers like me who visit Stack Overflow 1,000 times every day, just copying things from here and there and just pasting it in my code and doing it, like releasing it to the production. Like guys like me can make it vulnerable, but guys like you guys are seem to me like pretty smart. Yeah, so let's talk about excesses. So what is excesses? Does anyone know what is excesses? Again, I don't have glob. I don't have glob, but I'll give you a gift, maybe. Yeah, so anyone want to try? Yeah, okay. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Give him a big round of applause, guys. Man. He said it. So XSS is like cross-site scripting attack. Attackers can inject JavaScript into your web application, and whenever a user visits or interact with your application, they can steal the data using the script that they already injected. So that's what XSS means. So it's called cross-site scripting. And whenever I read this, I'm not still getting why it's called XSS. It should be CSS, right? Cross-site scripting should be CSS. I did a research. I again visited Stack Overflow. Why it's called XSS? Then I got this interesting answer. It was CSS. Actually, in the 90s, when Yahoo was ruling the internet, it was CSS. Then the CSS that friend-enders know, cascading style sheets, right? It got familiar, then there was a conflict. So then someone decided, okay, let's call it XSS. It's not about only like CSS, maybe I'm assuming that like people started doing XSS like in so many ways. They can inject the script, they can do the origin policies. Let's call it X. So X stands for everything. So simple, XSS. I'm just kidding. Don't take it seriously, guys. Okay. And the next question is like, this guy is looking at me and I could read it from his face like Varghese again and XSS talk in 2023 is relevant. It is definitely relevant because in late 2022, one of the online newspapers published an article saying like one of the researchers, they did an XSS attack on Google and as part of testing. So they managed to do XSS attack in Google Cloud. So even like bigger applications can get affected by these kind of attacks. So we cannot take it like lightly. So we should really care about these kind of attacks when you do coding, when you do React especially. Then let's see what are the things that we can like think of in terms of XSS in React. So there are so many things, but just conscious of time, I cannot like discuss all the XSS, possible XSS attacks. So probably I'll discuss two things. So we have already seen React as output. React has the output encoding for HTML entities, right? So let's see how the hyperlinks works with React. And we can discuss about dangerously set inner HTML as well. So from the name itself, it sounds like a bit dangerous, right? XSS in React apps. So today we're going to discuss like two of them. One is, as I said, like hyperlinks. So just see this example where I am trying to have an anchor tag in my application, and this anchor tag, instead of giving a proper href, I'm trying to give something like this, JavaScript alert. You guys probably know how does it work, right? So it's gonna print an alert. So that doesn't matter. So what I'm trying to say is like, we can have any values for such href. React at the moment, I mean, it's 8:15. Till now, they haven't implemented it. Yeah, so we can have XSS by having an alert like this in the href. But the thing is, like, if you add this, like you will get a warning in React apps. They are working on it. So they are working on identifying the URLs starting with JavaScript or something else. But still, they haven't implemented completely. So we need to handle from our side. So the next question is like, how would we handle these kind of things? So if you ask me, I can simply say from this tutorial, okay, JavaScript :alert. Okay, any guesses what I'm thinking? In a normal way, how would I solve this? By having a regex or by targeting the term JavaScript, I can actually like get access of this malicious URL, and I can replace the JavaScript keyword with something else, or I can just simply set, okay, if it has JavaScript, then set it to hash or something, so that I would be probably preventing the XSS attack, right? I'm going with this kind of solution. Instead of directly using the Twitter link, I'm going to set a use state, then in the effect, I'm going to check, okay, whether it has a JavaScript, then set the Twitter link to hash and use that valid Twitter link. I'm done. So I'm ready to do the production release. He was telling me that instead of string, maybe I can pass an object. So that is one way, but still, I can get access of that object that has been passed to the function, right? So I'll tell you, like one guy already showed me a sign. Yeah, so that's the right answer. Give him a big applause. Actually, the answer is, instead of passing one argument, I can pass two. What if I pass the script in the second argument? But again, you guys would be thinking, how can I pass two arguments here, right? Because I showed an image tag, so that would be one argument. How can I make it two? So I'll show you one. The one possibility that I could think of here is like having a control characters like this, like x19. So it would skip the if check, and it will again inject the JavaScript. So this is one downside. So normally people always have a temptation to go with this regex approach. I'm not saying it's too bad, but they have the tendency to go with this targeting one particular character or certain phrase, something like that. Okay, let's talk about the takeaways now. We have seen that React won't encode the attribute values. So when I say won't encode the attribute values, I mean the HTML attributes. We discussed about href, but HTML has so many attributes, for example, like name, alt. So everywhere I can inject the XSS or the script. So you should be really careful when you handle this, especially if you are taking the attributes from a user input. So I can have this attributes taken from a user input. So there you should be very careful because React or other frameworks, they are not doing it automatically or by default. So maximum, like avoid user inputs in all attribute. And the last thing, but not the least, do not implement any denialists like we discussed, like do not implement JavaScript. Do not target a certain phrase because it can also get escaped. So instead, you can try something like this. So if you look at this, so we have something called URL object. So you can create a new URL. You can check the protocol. So the property that URL object has, it's called protocol, whether it has an HTTPS or HTTP, this is one way of doing. I'm not saying that this is 100% correct, but this is one way of doing stuff. So just before inserting your Twitter link directly or any other link, just pass it to this method and have it. Otherwise, you'll give it like a hash. That's one takeaway, for the href. So the second thing that I have is like talking about dangerously set inner HTML is like pretty danger. Yeah. But let's see what is dangerously set HTML, where we use it, when we need to use it. So it's like this is a property which enables user to add HTML element in the React app. So imagine I have a situation where I need to insert the HTML directly to my div or any other component, so I can use this. But most of the times, whenever we use, we are not aware of the danger behind it or the possibility of injecting malicious script or something into your application. So you have to be very careful with this. And let's see how this can affect. Imagine I have a requirement. I need to insert an image and it has an src and all attribute, and I'm instead of like hard coding it, I'm just getting this data from somewhere. It can be from database, it can be from user input or something. So imagine I have this. This is a pretty simple, most of us would be having this, and it's based on the business requirement that I should have an alt. Nowadays, like accessibility plays most important role in the front-end applications, right? So let's see how it affects. So now I have all text as a Berlin meetup, which is like pretty fine. I don't have any other issues. But let's see if we replace that alt tag with an image tag again, and which has a script. So I have an image tag. It has an src, which is like a wrong value. I'm just giving X instead of normal href. Then I have an on error attribute, which will get invoked automatically when I give a small or wrong value to the src field. And in the beginning, you could see I'm closing the HTML, which means the parent element, it gets closed. Now I'm adding a new image, and this is one way for me, which enables me or which gives me the privilege to get into your application and inject the script. This can introduce excesses in your React app. So how would you prevent that? So basically, like we discussed last time, I can go with a certain function which detects these kind of HTML entities. I can replace it with normal output encoded values. Probably I can think of having list of HTML entity values, and I can have a map. Then I can do a escape function which detects all the values and replace it, right? So that would be a normal way, like we discussed for href. So is there any other way that you could think of? Probably I'll show you the suggested way of having like an escape function with all the HTML entities. So I'm just replacing. You would probably understand the function that I'm using here, right? I never spent time creating this function. I just copied it from one of the online or one of the open libraries from their GitHub. It's not created by me, so they are using it. So I'll come to that later, but this is one way. Still, you can prevent the injections or the things that I showed to you, like instead of having that alt value directly, I'm just passing it to the XSS method, and it replaces all the HTML entities. So likewise, I can prevent. Yeah, so there are certain ways, like you can use, you can depend actually on third-party libraries. And the best way to do is, like, before injecting the HTML, you should sanitize your HTML. It's like applying the sanitizer to your hand to make it clean. Likewise, we can sanitize the HTML before injecting it to your app. How would we do that? So I forgot to mention one thing, that even these kind of XSS functions can again get compromised. Like how? I'll show you one example, then I'll go to the sanitize or the third-party solution that I was talking about. So this, now I have XSS method which accepts one argument. right? So which accepts one argument, and that argument would be my script, and it will replace everything. So I have given you a clue here. So can you think of compromising this method, or any way that you could think of? I can just compromise this and I can again inject script into your application. Anyone? Can you just give a try? I'll again give you a clue. This function accepts one argument. Anyone? Yeah. Okay. So again, yeah, that's also one option that he was telling me. He was telling me that instead of string, maybe I can pass an object. So that is one way, but still, I can get access of that object that has been passed to the function, right? So I'll tell you, like, one guy already showed me a sign. Yeah, so that's the right answer. Give him a big applause. Actually, the answer is, instead of passing one argument, I can pass two. What if I pass the script in the second argument? But again, you guys would be thinking, how can I pass two arguments here, right? Because I showed an image tag, so that would be one argument. How can I make it two? So I'll show you the example. So here, what I do, in the old tag, I'm passing an A. So it's like a tag. Then, as a second argument, I'm passing the onload. So alt will take it as, or our XSS method will take it as a second argument. And what would be the output? Again, I have XSS in my application. So this is one way to like compromise your method. So the normal methods sometimes won't work. Again, you need to think of it. But basically, like, if you think of your context, I'll come to the takeaways. So let's talk about the takeaways. We have seen the normal way of preventing the XSS attack while using the dangerously set inner HTML. So let's talk about the takeaways. So it's best not to use dangerously set inner HTML until absolutely necessary. I know that this is kind of like a command. I'm asking you guys, do not use this. But sometimes we will be like forced to use these kind of things, so we cannot do anything. So if you're supposed to use, then always use the context-aware output encoding. So you might be knowing, like, okay, what are the things that I'm gonna use or I'm gonna send in the dangerously set inner HTML. So if you are aware of that, then probably you can target that context and you can probably encode. Likewise, having an XSS method, that would help to a certain level. Then the last thing is the sanitize. So this is the example. So there is a library called DOM Purify. I'm not promoting this library, but it's been suggested by OWASP. So I'm not sure how many of you are aware of OWASP. It's like a open web application security project. So like a open body that is making the security standards. So they suggested this, like you can have a library like DOM Purify, and you can sanitize the HTML before you use it inside this. But again, so now we stopped using dangerously set inner HTML. We use sanitize. But what if your third-party libraries, because we have so many dependencies in the React app, right? So what if they use? It can also like affect your application at the end of the day. So it's best that you should apply at least a ESLint check to your Node modules. Then you will get, somehow you will get an alert at least. So that will help to identify these kind of like mispatterns or anti-patterns that will be used in the third-party libraries as well. So this is also one takeaway that I can think of. Then you're safe. Like if you follow these things, then you can get rid of XSS attacks. But as I told you, like I only discussed two things, like HTML attribute and this dangerously set inner HTML. There are certain other ways of like introducing XSS to your web application. Like if I have a JSON, I need to like I can inject a script through JSON, then that is also one thing. Then if you guys are a big fan of doing server-side rendering, that can also get compromised with the XSS. So be aware of these things whenever you do coding, and you can have at least a basic checking on your application, and it will be like secure. I'm taking too much time, I guess. So probably if you have any questions, I would be here drinking a beer, so you can join and do a pause. Yeah.
I know everybody wants to have beers, slice of pizza left or whatever, but I promise I will be very, very, very quick tonight. I'm Stefano. I'm working in Nord Security since more or less 1 year. More specifically for NordVPN.com, so the marketing side. And what we're going to talk tonight, it's basically the journey that we have from a small POC, small proof of concept, to basically set up an entire monorepo for marketing pages that we're going to use in the future in Nord. So the agenda, pretty simple. So a bit of context, I would say, from a success to have another problem, which is basically, I think, the normal life of a developer. I mean, it's probably something that you encounter in life in general. You have a success, you have another problem. Then the differences between monorepo and polyrepo, because at some point we had this question to answer. And then our final choice with some like very fancy usage of turborepo and show all its power. Basically, everything started from that. I joined in Nord. We had this nordvpn.org pages, static generated, all good. They were made with Next, but I mean, there's always a better way to optimize, right? So basically, we took this as a guinea pig for our new check with like checking out new technologies. And we decided to migrate this with our new stack. And yeah, it was a great success. As you see, like performance, accessibility, best practices, and SEO were like very good. This is basically a dream image for, stakeholders, tech lead, engineering manager, and everything. So, well, like it was a great success. But we encountered a problem, right? So the new stack, in this case, specifically was Astro plus Solid.js component, or simply Astro component, was a success. After replacing NordVPN.org, we created different, let's say, components, and I'm not talking about visual components, but also like utility components or simply configurations to share across different applications. And this needed at some point to like must be decoupled from this POC and become like interusable with our different applications. So for example, nordvpn.com, which is the main website. And then basically the code name of this project was actually Stella, because I mean, we like to give fancy names. And then we had these components that I was saying before, right? Like design system components, TypeScript configuration, all the configuration, that you do once and you want to have across the company about linting, prettier, Husky. Also Tailwind, we use Tailwind. So, you have this configuration about, let's say, the design system, the color, typography. Regarding configuration also about unit tests and end-to-end tests with Playwright or Vitest. And of course, some pipelines. Specifically, we use GitLab in that case. So yeah, let's say a lot of things went out of it, and we decided, okay, how we structure now the future of basically front end. And we basically needed to decide to go in a monorepo or polyrepo approach. If somebody of you doesn't know the difference, that's a very simple graphic that shows actually the main difference. So monorepo is basically a repository that can contain, let's say, all the packages, as I said, for example, configuration or design system components, to basically the consumer application, which are like nordvpn.com, nordvpn.org, or whatever, like blog pages and stuff like that. They all live in the single code base, single repository, right? Polyrepo is actually the opposite. It's basically you have one repo for everything, like one repo for each component, and then interchange. They will interchange basically through imports and kind of different shenanigans, like basically data. Some examples, library or that basically use this approach are like for Monorepo, it's basically TurboRepo or NX or Lerna. And for Polyrepo, basically there's no proper library for that. I mean, you just basically use NPM, like publishing your, let's say, packages and importing, or simply if you want to have it private, then you will use probably something like Verdaccio. It's just for information. I put Lerna there. It was kind of dead at some point, but now basically it was acquired by another company. So basically NX and Lerna are under the same hood. They are both different but valid approaches. And just to quote Marie Kondo, I mean, who sparks joy here? Like the fact that you're using Monorepo doesn't mean that it is better than having a Polyrepo approach. Every approach has pros and cons. And this is what we are going to take quickly, I will say, a look tonight. The pros of having Monorepo is basically have one source of truth, right? So everything stays in that code base, is shared across different developers' computer. And basically you are forced to basically maintain everything from automation script, infrastructure configuration, test suites, everything in one configuration, in one code base. So there is basically, that's a good pro, there is one version of everything with dependency management. Like when you're going to release, for example, using a semantic release approach, you basically care about, let's say, the global version. You can also do more like granular versioning of different packages, but it's way easier because everything happens when the MR or PR gets accepted. It's easy to track basically the versioning of each app or package that's is part of this Monorepo. It's also very easy to refactor features because basically whenever you're going to change something, you have full control in the same PR from the small package to like more global changes or more atomic changes in the consumer application. This gives us clear visibility, and it's very easy if you have a good pipeline release to basically release what you're going to change. From the other end, there are cons using a Monorepo approach, which is actually no way to restrict access of different part of the project, right? So if you have a developer that has some right to go and use that repo, basically you cannot give, let's say, granular rights in different parts of the project. This can also have the con of having higher build time, because of course, when you're going to rerun the pipeline, you have 20 applications and probably you changed one. Well, I mean, all 20 application probably needs to rebuild, but there is a hack on that, and we are going to see basically after how to, let's say, win this problem. Another con is basically that if you have a lot of amount of people working in the same repository, well, it can be tricky to sync everyone. I mean, that's probably part of the dev culture and engineering culture, but you know, we're humans, so we tend to create problem when we can, and it's also in a way like difficult to learn another orchestration tool. Take example as Lerna, take example of NX or something like that. You're basically relying all your big Monorepo, let's say, to a third-party library. And take an example of Lerna that for some point it kind of like it was in a moment that was not managed anymore. Then all these people and all these repository that were managed, let's say, orchestrated by Lerna, but that was a big problem, right? You have basically your source of orchestration that is not maintained anymore. So it's kind of tricky, right? It has pros and cons. From the other side, from the Polyrepo, it's actually very nice for some people that code bases are clearly defined. So you actually can go also granular with, giving access to different developers. And there is extreme usability of the projects because even though you don't have access to the Monorepo, let's say, or to a Monorepo approach, then you can decide also to, let's say, publish only one package, right, and make it public, then you have quicker build time because each package, let's say each repository will have its pipeline, can run in sync, no worries. So you can rely on different builds at the same time. You don't need to learn another tool, which is good. And the release flow is way simplified. It's the last one, I promise. I don't like to have big lists, but it is what it is. The other side, Polyrepo, it can be complicated to lose the track of dependencies if they're not documented. Having multiple release flow at the same time, let's say I change a button in the design system library and repo, and I need to adapt, let's say, a prop in a React application. These kind of things, they need to happen at the same time, but I need to orchestrate manually because they are completely separated. So still, you can automate in a sort of a way, but it is kind of, more, it needs more attention. And it's also more effort to setting up project in local, because instead of having one repository you set up in local and that's it, Monorepo, here you have to probably use different setup, or like, I don't know, install 10 times, different times, like the node modules or only God knows what. So it takes a lot of time to set up in local different application. These are the cons of Polyrepo. Then what basically we did, we evaluated this pro and cons, and we basically encountered this tool, which is called Turborepo, Lord and Savior by Vercel, because, I'm not affiliated with Vercel, but it's seriously like mind-blowing, and thank you for existing. Who knows Vercel or using any Vercel product here? Only one? Oh, no, okay. So I have one ball, I just throw it randomly. And I took the person that didn't put the hands. It's okay. Sorry for that. So the point is, even if it's a tool, it's still easy to set up, because at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. It's just a task runner, right? Actually, most of the magic can come from the PNPM or Yarn workspaces. It depends how you set up your Monorepo. It has local and remote caching, which we're going to see now in a bit, which is actually lifesaver part for us. It can make also parallel execution of tasks, which is helping a lot. And it has also so many nice gifts, let's say, like generating the dependency graph visualization to basically see in a graph how your packages and consumer application are going to talk with them. And the good thing is that it's agnostic framework, so you can use it basically if you use Next, if you use Astro, whatever. You can have different different frameworks. It's seriously just, it doesn't care much about what kind of front-end application you're going to create. And this is about the cache. As I said before, a big problem of Monorepo is that you have higher build time. That I guess is probably what it's making us being impatient when we're waiting for the pipeline to be all green. This is actually the solution that Turborepo gives, right? So it basically generates some cache on changes, and it generates this cache to have it locally in your computer and remotely synced across the team. That means that, take this example from our experience, we have 3 applications, NordVPN org, NordVPN main, and Aurora Docs, which is basically a storybook handmade by us because Astro doesn't support, Storybook doesn't support Astro component, blah, blah, blah. And you see, like, these 3 tasks, they will be rebuilt every time you create a new pipeline. Even if I change a letter in NordVPN org, I still need to wait for NordVPN main and Aurora Docs to be built in a Monorepo context, right? So I need to wait 25 seconds, 20 seconds, 17 seconds. Try to imagine when we'll have 20 applications, like you basically just want to shoot yourself in the head. But with the amazing Lord and Savior Turbo Repo, you will see that if there is a cache present, and in this case, basically I didn't change anything, I just rerun the pipeline without making any change, everything went full turbo, which means I am not going to rebuild org, main, and docs again. I'm basically just avoiding it because the hash of the change in the cache didn't change. So it's basically millisecond. You can do everything in 400 milliseconds, in half of a second, basically. In that context, if I change org, I will probably rebuild and wait 25 seconds for org, but I don't need to wait for the others because they were basically untouched. So I think this probably was the main takeout that we had from like choosing a monorepo approach. My suggestion, I mean, that's why I said I want to tell you a story tonight. There's no proper takeout. This is more like an experience that I had, and we had a team. Behind the scene, like I actually colleague with the big O guy. So we are actually in the same team and squad. So he's the guy that checks my code. He was saying no, but he always checked the code. He's like, no, it's not fast enough and performance and whatever. But yeah. There's no proper takeout. I mean, I can suggest you to try this technology, but as I say, I'm not affiliated. It's just more like to give you two different point of view. And maybe when you're going to take a new proof of concept or you want to just change architecture of your front-end applications, you can have pro and cons in mind after this talk with me tonight. So thank you. I think that's it. I am, if you want to take a picture of this, like, I mean, that's some documentation that I found. Probably most importantly, you can take a look at the first and second. Everybody probably knows Storybook. I don't even know why I put it there. But I mean, yeah, share the knowledge. And then Monorepo Tools is also very good because it actually shows pro and cons of different libraries. And then a video of YouTube that I don't remember what it is. I hope it's something safe for work. Otherwise, you will remember of me. Thank you. Grazie.